Hi, Mark from Sharkbait here. Wanted to go over a couple of the new pieces from Penn that were introduced in 2011 because it's a nice thing to see from this manufacturer that's very well respected and has been for years and years and years. More world's records are held by Penn than really anybody else out there. They've been designing reels that have been really landmark pieces in the industry since their early days in the 1930s. Penn certainly is the grandfather of all the major reel companies out there. And they went through a period where they owned the market, and they went through a period where they were just not quite on the right track. More recently, during the early 2000s and probably in 1990s, it started slipping away. And then they came back with a vengeance this year and for 2012. At the ICAST show in July of 2011, I was very happy to see Penn come out with some new pieces that hit the nail right on the head. But first off, let me kind of predate this to last year. Penn came out with a series of reels called the Fathoms, and the Fathom series reels were a level wind, a beautifully designed level wind, probably the nicest level wind on the market. Quite a step up from the old GTI series from Penn. The new series is an all-metal construction, star drag, and I'm not sure if you can hear this or not, but it is ratcheted or has detents. Same on the centering piece for the spool. Wonderful reel, and again, a class piece of gear and probably the best level wind on the market. Unfortunately, they didn't introduce this as a non-level wind version, and as soon as we saw this, we said, hey, what they've got here is basically a saltist beater of a reel. Versa-drag system using HT100s, good gearing, nice piece. But no non-level wind version, and that's really what Penn needed to have in the line. So again in 2010, and maybe a little crossover 2011, Penn came up with a new piece, another new piece, the Squall series of reels, which replaced the old 525 meg from Penn. Wonderful reel, would do up to 15 pounds worth of drag, perfectly adequate drag for fishing, really even up to 50-pound spectra for the guys doing bottom fishing. Two small pieces, maybe straight mono, 300 to 12 and 300 to 15. There's two widths, there's a Squall 12 and a Squall 15, both with magnetic cast control, which is a dial this time instead of a slider, which is a better thing in terms of saltwater intrusion or getting dumped. Wonderful reels, but we needed to see something bigger from Penn. Well, at the ICAST show in 2011, Penn, I thought, had probably the best show of any of the manufacturers, with the one possible exception of Okuma. But Penn came out with things that they've needed, big time, and that was the Fathom Star Drag series of reels. The Fathom Star Drags, there are 5 reels in the family, starting with a little piece. This little guy here is a model 12. Now these reels share that same all-metal construction. They use Penn's spool design, which has markings on the inside of the spool. I'm not sure if I can zoom in here enough to really show it clearly or get it focused clearly, but you can see there are markings on the inside of the spool that allow you to, as a reference point, so you know how many yards you have on the line, on the reel. For instance, you may go ahead and spool it up to the second marking on the spool, and at that point say, okay, I've got 300 yards of spectra there, the remaining is top shot. Notice spin the spool down. If I'm going to add, if I'm going to fish bottom, I'll go ahead and knock the mono off and just fish a straight spectra at that point, and know you have a certain number of yards based on where that marking is as a reference point. Nice feature. Machined aluminum on the spool itself, and the thing that these pieces really bring to market is a reel that has exceptional drag performance. The whole Fathom series will do up to 25 pounds worth of drag. 25 pounds of drag equates to fishing, on the outside limit, say 75-pound line, 80-pound line. Usually we're setting our drag for 1/3, 25% to 30% or so of the line test. So, you've got a ton of drag and no influence upon the free spool performance, given that it's a star drag reel. There are times where a star drag reel has some distinct advantages over a lever drag. Lever drags are great for that precise drag control. A star drag, however, you can button down without reducing the amount of free spool performance from the reel or putting too much side load pressure on the bearing. So a star drag has some advantages for the guys doing some bottom fishing. It's subjective to a certain extent, but a lot of the guys who are big on bottom fishing prefer a good quality star drag reel. And these certainly are a good quality star drag reel. Again, all metal construction, machined on the spool. It will allow you to also button down the spectra on here without the use of a backing tape. We typically will use a backing tape, but you don't have to do this on this reel because the spectra is not going to spin on the way the spool itself is designed. Nice piece. But we go from a little 12 that'll be, in mono terms, 300 yards of 12-pound line. Okay, spectra being 1/3 the diameter of mono, that means you'll get about 300 yards of 30-pound spectra on here, maybe a little bit more than that. Then we go up to a model 15, and 15, like the little Squall 15s, same sort of size, but greater drag capability. It does not have the anti-backlash or the magnetic cast control feature, but I'll try and zoom in and show you in just a minute just how good the free spool performance is off of these reels. They spin like tops. And probably offer, in my estimation anyway, probably the best free spool performance of anything in their dollar class of reels. Wonderful to see coming from Penn. On the West Coast side, probably the most popular piece, and I think probably through the country, is going to be the Model 25. We bump up the diameter a little bit from when we go from the 12 and the 15 up to the 25. The 25 is a narrow, great reel for jigging purposes, real comfortable to fish, and then they go up to a 30 size, and they go up to a 40 size. The 40 will be a mono test anyway. Say 300 yards of 40 pounds, 300 yards of 30 pound on a 300, 300 yards of 25 pound mono on a Model 25 narrow, 300 of 15, and the 300 of 12 on the other two smaller models. This piece on a jig stick is going to cast like crazy. It'll be a wonderful piece to have. Again, a little heavier body, stronger, all metal construction, machine spool, made for fishing spectra with great drag capability, up to 25 pounds of drag. And you can vary it anywhere in between. You've got two positions on the handle, so if you need a little more cranking power, you can go ahead and extend the handle down a little bit and get more leverage out of it. The reels are all 6-to-1 in terms of the gear ratio. That's a fast gear ratio. The gears are oversized. You've got a bronze main gear, stainless on the pinion gear. Now, it's 6-to-1 for some applications may be considered too fast. There are a lot of reels that are hitting the 6-to-1 level now. Daiwa has even a 7.3, which is god-awful fast. For jigging purposes, a fast gear ratio has some merits. Getting a big fish on the other end, the fast gear ratio is going to reduce your cranking power. We've talked to Penn, and we will see if they do this, as far as coming out with another gear set for the reels. That, I think, would be a real advantage for some of those guys who are fishing heavier lines for bait application rather than a jig or a lure application. On Penn's Torque series of US-made conventional star drag reels, they have a system where you can go ahead and replace the gear set. Wonderful. That gear set won't work here because of the materials used. We've got two different materials being involved. So the main gear wouldn't be a matchup. But I would be willing to bet you dollars to donuts that over the course of the next year or so, Penn will introduce another gear set for this reel. They already have them, for the Fathom levelwind pieces. So I would think just repackaging those as an option, maybe targeting a $40 or $50 price point would be a real nice thing to see and would increase the versatility of the piece. But nonetheless, at 6-to-1, that's consistent with the competition out there that Penn has, except they've got a better constructed piece that'll produce more drag more consistently with the HT100s, which are really set the industry standard for drag material. And it's a VersaDrag, so you can go ahead and vary that drag curve somewhat. So the guys that really need a real soft drag, they can achieve that. If you need a real heavy drag, you can achieve that too. Wonderful piece from Penn. Let me go ahead and put her on pause, bring the reel up a little bit closer, and show you just for a moment what this free spool performance is like. Okay, I mentioned I wanted to show the free spool performance. Let's go ahead and do just that. As you can see, maybe now a little bit better, the markings on the inside of the spool, so you know really you have a reference point for your spooling. If we look a little closer on the inside of the spool, you can see that you've got certain points here where you can go ahead and stretch the line on through and tie it directly to the spool, eliminating any sort of spectra spinning. If you go straight up with spectra or use spectra as a backing, that's an advantage because spectra is slippery, and if it's not packed properly, you can have some, you can see the line actually move that way. But let's go for the free spool. The phones are ringing. I'm going to have to jump on those lines here in a couple moments, but at this point, let's finish up the video. So that's a spin, and you can see this thing spins like a top. Spins very, very well. That represents a reel with excellent casting potential.